Good afternoon and welcome to another NC Leap webinar serving low wealth entrepreneurs. Today, I'd like to welcome our speaker, Tristan Hunkin. Tristan is an attorney that operates as a solo practitioner. She serves business owners and advises on estate planning. She's also the founder of Ripe Lemon Investments, which is a North Carolina nonprofit that supports underserved entrepreneurs who are seeking to start their businesses. She provides free legal advice, counseling, information, as well as marketing support. Today, Tristan is joining us to talk about launching a nonprofit. Thanks for joining us, Tristan.
Thanks so much, Kim. So as she mentioned, I have started a nonprofit. So if this is something that you are interested in doing, you're in a good place because it's a bumpy road to get started. It sounds like a simple process. So I'm excited to share some very practical step-by-step things that you will have to do, actually register and what those look like today. So this video will be shared. The slides will be open and available for you to follow along. So you can utilize these resources if starting a nonprofit is something that you do pursue in the future. So we'll get started. Today, we're going to talk about identifying your mission. So why do you want to be a nonprofit? What are you going to accomplish? How to select your team, how to do first state registration, how to obtain your 501c3, which is your federal basically tax exemption for when you receive donations. General operations, just some tips that I've learned from operating Ripe Lemon Investments that were a little bumpy. I had to learn the hard way. So I'll share with you some better practices that we've ironed out. Some fundraising and resources to keep in mind, things to look out for, and when you're trying to build grants and so forth for funding. And then just additional considerations that we'll discuss. So first and foremost, when you're identifying your mission, you want to make sure that there's a need for what you want to serve. So sometimes the need might already be met in the public. One thing that can be really hard is there's only so many donors out there. It's not even that there's a lot of money out in the world, but allocation always seems to get the bottleneck in the pipeline. So there's enough money to go around for several nonprofits. It's just making sure that you're not splitting the pie so thin that it doesn't really serve the purpose that it needs to. And what I mean by that is, let's say you want to start a nonprofit that is an animal rights or an animal shelter or something along those lines where you're doing animal needs, but you already have 3 or 4 animal support groups, within a 20 to 50 mile radius of where you want to open up shop. It might not be as advantageous to start and build from scratch versus just contacting those agencies and seeing how you could bring your ideas, your talents, your time, your money, and invest it into something that's already built. And I know that can be hard for some people because sometimes it's more of a, I want to do it the way I want to do it. And that's why you're choosing to do your own nonprofit. But I really encourage you to think about the population you want to serve. Really identify your mission and understand, is this about them, whoever them is, homeless, whatever it is, youth programming, whatever your them is, or is it about you? And so you have to be very careful because running a nonprofit is not as glamorous as you could possibly imagine. It is very, very time consuming and it can be very challenging. There's a lot of legal rules you have to be on a lookout for. And it can just be a little overwhelming if you're not in it for the right reason. So make sure that as you're identifying your mission, you've really researched, is this already being met somewhere else? That I could simply support the cause that I'm very passionate about. You really love serving, women, entrepreneurs, or whatever it is that you're very passionate about. You want to help the elderly or veterans. And so take that passion to something that's already in service. And then you identify, where you want to serve, how you're going to serve, and then how you're going to measure that progress. If after you've realized there really is nowhere that this is what I want to do isn't being met to the full capacity, or they're already at capacity, so starting another one would still be a benefit. If you've established that, then those are some of the questions that you want to ask yourself. Okay, so then where you're going to serve, who that population is going to be. You've really narrowed it down. You've tailored the services to make sense for them to be accessible so that people know that you exist. That's one of the hardest things for nonprofits to overcome is, we serve entrepreneurs who are launching their business completely for free, which is unheard of. So I've been told many times, but it's something I'm very passionate about. And I think helping someone register their business, because I've done business for so long, it's actually very quick for me. It's not challenging at all. It takes time, but not so much time that I feel it necessary to bog people down with anything. So I identify entrepreneurs that are a little bit more overlooked. That's why we are called Ripe Lemon, and try and figure out how we can serve them and make sure that we are offering services that they need and that they want, and we offer them for free. But it's amazing to me how when we first got started, it was challenging to even get our first client. You literally couldn't give it away for free. And so making sure that you understand who you're serving and your services are tailored, and you have a plan for how you're going to market that, a lot of times we networked with other nonprofits. And so we actually really created a good team that would support other people who were doing certain missions. So one of our projects that we do is a prison project for prisoners that are going to re-enter within 6 months to society. And so there's a lot of re-entry programs that have educational aspects, but they don't have the tangible. So they might teach them how to do a job interview or professional skills, but they're tangible. Okay, this is how you register the business idea that you have. This is how you do a trademark or whatever it is that the entrepreneur might be needing. So that's where we fill in the gap. We have attorneys on call, basically volunteers that will step in and say, yeah, I'll take this client and work with them to get them registered and up and going. So again, it's only for people launching their business, but it fills this very specific need. We have a very identified locations of where we're advertising, of where we're letting people know, hey, we're here to help. What can we do? And that has helped a lot. So make sure that you are figuring out what your mission is, and you're very clear on that, and then who that mission is going to serve, because the population, you can't help and save everybody. So it's very important to narrow that down from the beginning. So once you have decided, what you're doing, how you're going to serve, who do you want to serve with? So for North Carolina, there's a requirement that you have 3 members be on the board for nonprofits. And that's because nonprofits are not supposed to be owned by any one individual. They're basically a business in a way. So let me actually share that with you. Back on our previous slide, I mentioned make sure that you have the right reasons for why you want to start a nonprofit. Sometimes I run into people that are just really nervous about going into business. And so they'll open a nonprofit that charges minimal fees for what they're doing. So it really does operate like a nonprofit. They're not going to make big margins on it or anything. They're just trying to do a good deed. But they're doing it because they're just nervous about operating it as a full-fledged business where they're trying to earn a profit. And I will forewarn you, nonprofits are still businesses in the sense that, think about a church. It is definitely one of a very easy, simplistic view of a nonprofit, but they still have to pay the lights. They still have to pay their staff. They still have some legal, and insurance needs that they'll have to pay. So they have to bring in money. Money will still be a part of what you do as a nonprofit. So if you're very timid about the idea of running a business, and so your thought is, well, I won't run a business, I'll run a nonprofit definitely operates very much like a business. The only difference is you don't own it. You have to own it with a board of directors. So it's, it's shared, the burden and the responsibility and the decisions are shared among a group of people. And it's not a way for you to make an actual increased income in the sense of an increased profits. You can be paid by the nonprofit, certainly, and we'll talk about that later. for a small salary or a reasonable salary for the size of your organization. But I do want to encourage you that nonprofits, they have to, in order to be effective and efficient and accomplish the mission that you have to be able to bring in money. You have to be able to be organized with that money. And you have to work with a team that understands that. So just keep that in mind as you're considering opening a nonprofit, because it definitely has a lot of all the same principles that you would have in business, the way you market, the way you hire, the way that you're identifying your target audience, which for this would be the mission purpose. Very similar business aspects that I think sometimes our bleeding hearts that are so well intentioned just don't fully grasp. And I would just, word of caution, to take a minute and really iron out what would you need to do to make the nonprofit successful. So as you're building your team, think of who could you bring on, who could you call today if you don't already have them in your back pocket, to bring on to this experience. Maybe it's a friend, a neighbor, a family member, whoever. Make sure it's someone that is going to respect your leadership. That is definitely something that I think is critical when it comes to building anything, whether a business or a nonprofit, because you want to make sure your goals are constantly aligning. You don't have to agree on every single thing, but you need to trust that the people you're asking to do this with you also trust and respect you, so that it can grow in a really healthy way. And the focus can always stay on the mission and not on internal conflicts. So that's really important. Once you identify maybe a few names, kind of think through, like, what are the talents that you don't possess? What are some things that you might lack that you can think of, I really want to pull that person in? For me, for Ripe Lemon, we have marketing. I have a MBA, so I do have some experience with generalized marketing, but I knew I wanted something even more specialized, and I wanted to focus on bringing the legal aspect of what we do and what we offer under our nonprofit. So I actually asked one of my dear friends, who's a marketing director for a big marketing firm, if she'd be willing to come and be on my board of directors and use her network of marketers that she knows to filter as volunteers. To, when we have a client, if she can't handle it, maybe she could get a volunteer and use it that way. And so I knew that that was a talent that I could grab within my network. And she was, willing and excited to start this. Also getting diverse backgrounds. And I don't mean diversity just in the generic buzzword, but like truly diverse backgrounds, like people who have a different way of looking at things than you would. When you're dealing with nonprofits, a lot of times there's a lot of emotions that surround whatever topic, whatever mission you could possibly fathom. There's a lot of discussion that goes along with that, right? That's why it's still in existence, because there's a problem that society has not been able to solve. And so that is why nonprofits continue to exist. And so having people who can approach this mission, this issue that you're trying to resolve, this right that you're trying to wrong, it just really helps you and your organization grow in such a more meaningful way. And it really benefits the people that you're trying to serve, because not everyone's going to think exactly like you. So having people on your team that genuinely have different backgrounds, they come from different economic backgrounds, they come from different cultural backgrounds, or even different religious backgrounds. Especially if you're dealing with people, having different religions on your team can make you more autonomous to letting other people, support them. Obviously, if you're a church, that's different. But I know for us, that was really important, because we didn't want to isolate any of our potential clients in a way that would make us not useful to them. And so we wanted to constantly make sure that we could meet as best we could, right? You can't serve everybody. There's a limitation to that, but we tried to be very intentional. So we actually have an attorney that I went to law school with, a wonderful human being, and she was born in Mexico. And so she has dual language, and she can speak Spanish, and she has just a very different entrepreneurial eyes that she gets to bring onto our team. It's so valuable to us. And so it really helps add some diversity to all of us and what we bring in our talents. And then, as I mentioned at the beginning, just trust and respect is really important. A lot of times people say, just remember your why. You may have heard that. That's a big slogan. I've heard it for years. Whatever you do, stop and think about why you're doing it. And that's great. I love it. You definitely need to know why you're doing something. But I would challenge and say that identifying your who is far, far more important, because who is going to support you, at 10 o'clock at night when you still need to get whatever it is done, for the IRS paperwork or the grant that you're trying to accomplish. And so you need just a few more pages completed. There's a lot of work that goes around nonprofits. It can get really tiresome. You can get discouraged at times, just like any business. So your who you've decided to go through this process with and build this organization with, so critical, absolutely critical, that who you surround yourself with really determines your success. So choose wisely and make sure that you cherish them, really, really cherish your team. You also want to assign jobs. So make sure that the leadership roles are decided, board member positions are decided, who's going to be on the board long-term versus a paid position, who's going to have voting and decision-making decisions versus just being a general support or volunteer. All of that, if the more you can iron out ahead of time before the problems arise, the better. That it just makes life so much easier for everyone when things are already ironed out. The leadership role, I wrote in there that said registered agent. So you do have to list at least one person with a name, a phone number, and a mailing address. You can use your organization's mailing address if you don't want to use your personal private one on your state applications. But you do have to list a registered agent. So you'll want to decide, usually it's whoever the founder is, president. I'm the registered agent for Reich Limit Investments, but I also listed my board members, my other 2 original board members. We have 4 more now, but my original people are on my state registration as well. And I just think that makes a big difference when you can go ahead and add your members right from the beginning. So speaking of state registration, it's a very critical part. And you complete the state registration by going to the Secretary of State, and you can, I think I can jump here, and Cam, just holler at me if for some reason my screen disappeared. But what I'm seeing is that, oh, perfect. So you go here and this links right to charity. So it tells you exactly what you need to do for how you do your solicitation that you'll apply for so that you're allowed to collect donations. It also, your actual registration process and what you need to do to file for registration can be there. And then the Secretary of State actually does a really good job for giving you guidance. So you can always actually just research for more information specific to what they would want you to do with their registration. So that takes you there. This is the website that you'll register on. You'll also want to draft your organizational bylaws. And so that, again, just staying organized. Who does what? How do you vote? How do things get changed? What are the positions of paid members versus board members? And all that can be outlined in your bylaws. You also want to file for a solicitation license unless you plan on collecting less than $25,000. There's a couple other exemptions, but typically that's the big one. For most nonprofits, you need a solicitation license. Most people do plan on either through grants or through individual donations, whatever it might be. Maybe you have mission-specific fees that you charge. So like hospitals and stuff, those can operate as a nonprofit and charge certain fees for their services, but they're a nonprofit because they're not making a profit margin the way that the industry does. But they are obviously going to make more than $25,000 a year. And so they'd need a solicitation license for any type of, gala that they decide to throw, and, $100 plate dinners or things like that to bring in those revenues to keep the operation of the mission, keep the operation of the organization going. So make sure that you file not only for your registration, but also for that solicitation license in North Carolina. And then you'll have your annual renewal of registration, and that's required for both. So you have your solicitation license that you'll renew, and then also you refile. When we say state registration, what I mean by that is you'll be filing your articles of incorporation. And again, on the Secretary of State website, as you go through, basically you go through that business orientation. I'm registering business, and you'll select charity, or it'll say nonprofit, and it'll guide you through exactly what form you need to. It'll take you to articles of incorporation, and you really just fill out that form. It's not overly complicated. It'll ask questions like, what is your name as the registered agent? That would be whoever the founder is. When are you going to be in operation? So what is your, opening your doors, so to speak, sort of date? What's the mission? What's the purpose that you plan to serve? All those questions. So there's no trick questions. There's nothing super scary about it. You just sort of follow along and fill out that paperwork and then submit it in. Once you've applied and registered and you are officially registered, then you can apply for an EIN number. And I'll just show you that here. It should never cost money for you to get an EIN. There are a few scams out there that charge for this. Just know that is not something you should be paying for. The IRS provides employer identification numbers for free. And so this is how you can do that. You just come onto this site. This gives you some general information about how to get one and who's eligible and things like that. But you just apply, you click apply now, and you're able to go through a very quick, very painless process in order to get that EIN number. Some people don't think they need one as a nonprofit because you're not an employee. You might be working for free. Like, for example, right now, Ripe Lemon is in September, will be 1 year old, but we're very new organization. And so none of us make a pay or a salary. We're all volunteers, but you need an EIN number regardless, because you're going to want that to set up your bank accounts and all of that, so that when you do get donations or when you do apply for grants, you have somewhere for that money to go. And bank accounts require not only your registration, your articles of incorporation, but they also require an EIN number, and most of them require a copy of your organizational bylaws. Not all, but a lot of banks do want to see them. So that's how you do that. The next part of your application of getting all the nitty-gritty paperwork done on the side of operating a nonprofit is to get your IRS tax exemption status applied for and hopefully accomplished. I will say, as complicated and frustrating as the IRS can be, they have done a really good job at trying to be much more streamlined, much more clear on who can apply, how to apply. Everything is online. So there shouldn't be anything that you have to mail file in. It should all be done electronically. You can use Form 1023, and that does have to be filed electronically. There's two versions of it. You have the full version of 1023, and that costs $600 to apply. Or you have the 1023 EZ, which is only $275. But when you choose the 1020 EZ, what that means is you're planning on not exceeding $50,000 in gross receipts. That means regardless how the money comes, whether it's through your own personal donations, grants, if you have a sponsorship that comes about, whatever it is, any receipts that come in, they're not going to exceed $50,000 for the first 3 years. Over the course of 3 years, you'll never exceed $50,000. So if that's true, then the 23 EZ might be worth it, might be worth doing that. We went ahead because we knew we wanted to be long-term. We weren't going to be up for a couple of years and then be done. We knew we wanted to grow something a little bit more long-term. And so we decided to go ahead and pay the $600 and apply as a Form 1023. And just from my reading and conversations with other nonprofits that have been around, what I have heard and learned is that a lot of companies that will do donations, grant foundations and so forth, they really favor organizations that have done the full Form 1023. It is a much more intense form. It takes a long time to complete. So it's one of those things you kind of want to take half a day to just focus on this 1023 form, make sure it's filled out very thoroughly, giving any information, if you think you gave too much information, that's no such thing on this form. You want to give them all the information. And so it's more thorough. And so these other grant organizations and other nonprofits have shared that they really seem to have much more clout when you're applying for, let's say, grants, or you're applying for sponsorship, or you go to a company and ask for that, and you share with them how your tax exempt status is listed. And when you're a true Form 1023, they view it more favorably because they know how intense and how complicated, much more of a deep dive the IRS did on your organization. Not that you couldn't get funded as an easy, but just from what I've read and what I've talked to people on, it just seems like it's much more surface level. And so they know that your tax exempt status is up for refusal. It's much easier and quicker to be denied the following year. If you can't prove, or you somehow exceed that amount, or something goes wrong, it's much harder to come back through the Form 1023 if you didn't just do that from the beginning. So with all that said, it's just a decision you have to make for your organization. $600 was a lot of money. I was very surprised it was going to cost that much. But you might consider why they do that. And in my mind, when I first I thought, wow, most people who are starting a nonprofit, they usually don't have, unless they're starting a foundation because they're an extremely wealthy family, most of the time they're modest people. They're just trying to do good. And $600, that could go really far in helping their mission, but we got to send it to the IRS. And as I thought about it more, I realized, I think it's a protective measure to make sure that people aren't just popping up nonprofits willy-nilly and collecting donations that half-heartedly do anything. So it really is just to show good faith, in my opinion. And it is a longer form, so I'm sure it just takes longer for their administrative staff to go through it. But again, it's your decision on how you do that. We decided to just go ahead and go all in, so that when we come up for review, it's just we've already been approved under the harder form. And so it's going to be easier for us, in theory, to maintain our tax exempt status. They also have, the IRS has a virtual course for additional understanding for what you can do. And before I click this, just so you know, there is annual registration, and it's not redoing 1023. It's called Form 990. You don't have to have these things memorized. These forms, once you go to the IRS, you'll see it over and over again. So it's no big deal. You don't have to memorize this. You can just sort of look up, annual registration and resubmit what you need to from the IRS. But I did want to show you, there's a virtual course that the IRS has put on for small to mid-sized tax-exempt organizations. So if you're a 501c3, you've been approved, or when you do get approved, I would highly recommend you and any of your staff or any of your volunteers that you're working with go through and watch these videos. They are really helpful, and it is extremely beneficial. So you see Form 990 overview course. So it talks about, completing each year, how you do that to maintain your tax exemption, talks about the rules for how you don't jeopardize your exemption. Just some really good information that I was actually very pleased and impressed that the IRS took the time to create these videos. They are truly videos, so they're, I don't know that I would say thrilling, but they are pretty good, to be honest. You have your legal eagle is who guides you through these videos. So it's obvious that they tried to make it as informative and yet like bearing that you can get through it. It's not just page after page that you read, they'll actually teach it to you through a video. So very nice. I highly encourage you to use that link and explore that, because it's a very helpful tool. So for your operations, let's say that you've identified your mission and you're definitely needed in the public. You've identified your team. They're going to be great. They have all the background, experience, and support you, and you support them. You've applied for state registration and been approved to have your EIN number. You've set up your 501c3. One more thing on the 501c3, it does take a long time. It took us almost 6 months to get approved to be registered nonprofit by the IRS, to be tax exempt by them. So that's honestly why some of our intentions of growth was a little delayed, because we were thinking, maybe 3 months, maybe 4 months, very naive. So it can take a long time just to prepare you. So that can help you plan and be a little more strategic with what can you do while you're not tax exempt during that time? Because there is a lot of stuff you could do marketing wise and making yourself known, networking with other organizations. So you can certainly use that time while you're waiting to kind of solicit for donations, because it's hard to get a donation when you have to tell them, no, we're not tax exempt yet. So during that time, you could still be doing other things. So let's say we've accomplished all of that. We have our tax exemption. We're ready to go. We're full on operational. And so there's some things, just basic business type concepts that you're going to want to apply to your nonprofit that deal with your identifying your address and your contact, your banking and your scheduling. So real quick on the address, I kind of alluded to it earlier. When you're a registered agent, it's public. So when you do that through the state, it is of public record. And so you may not want your home address to be of public record. And so a lot of times businesses and organizations will purchase a street address, and different mail carriers will support that. So you can do that. I'm sure you've seen with the UPS, you can do that. It's not a PO box. It's different. It's an actual physical street address, because you can't use a PO box with state registration or with EIN. But there's a lot of them. So I would encourage you to look it up, because they're growing in nature. There's so many that are available now. I can't even remember all of them, but there's like PostNet, and there's a few of them out there. So do some research, see what's in your budget of what you want to do to create an address that's for your organization and not your home address. And then same for contact, for like creating an email. It might be worth purchasing like a Google Suite and having your own separate domain when you build your website. It usually comes with a Gmail. And so it's separate from your personal Gmail. You have your own specific organizational email, your own organizational phone number. We added, instead of buying an entire line, which can be extremely expensive if you can imagine, we just added a line to one of our phones. And so someone had a phone through Verizon. It was like $15 a month to add a second line. And it truly was a second separate line with their own voicemail, their own text messaging. No one would know that it's going to their personal cell phone unless they were standing right next to them and just knew that information. So it comes off very clean, very professional, helps you stay organized, and it keeps your personal privacy separate from what you're trying to build for the organization and trying to create connections for that. So I hope that makes sense. For banking, I kind of touched on this a little bit already, but I'll show you in just a minute. Once you have your bank account set up, you might want to take electronic payments. And so you're going to want to set that up through your website for like a donation button, donate here, and how to do that. So getting your banking done before you start your website is actually really beneficial. Get all of that done ahead of time and then go to your website. Once you have your website, then you'll also want to do some scheduling. When we first started, I did not pay for scheduling. I thought, oh, I've paid for so much. I can't do it anymore. Surely people will just email me. I'll do this intake form. Well, they'll just fill it out, and then we'll go back and forth until we nail down a date. And that really scares people away. I really do believe that was part of the problem in the very beginning. People just got tired of going back and forth in the email. Oh, that date doesn't work that time. What about Tuesday? And so having to, just a paid scheduling on there where you set your time availability and your day availability, and they just choose from that, is pretty priceless. It really improved our success rate and actually converting clients and getting them to trust that, we're a legitimate organization. We really are here to support them. And this is when we're available. And so they it just streamlined that process for us. So I'll show you my organization real quick, just so you can kind of see around what I'm talking about, what we do. So Ripe Loan Investments, as Kim mentioned at the very beginning, we support entrepreneurs who are trying to launch their business. And we have a lot of different programs for that. So specifically, we launched for low income and minority entrepreneurs in the very beginning. We have expanded to where we do quite a bit with youth entrepreneurs, people who aren't going to plan on going to college, but they have they have strong skills. They have good work ethic. They just need to be able to be supported enough to put those skills into good use, into building something for themselves. We also, as I mentioned, we have the prison. Our fresh zest entrepreneurs is what we call them at Ripe Lemon, and it's where they're taking an opportunity that to take things into their own hand, build their own new life and their fresh start. I know for some people, you might be aware how hard it is to be hired after incarceration, even if it's a non-violent offense. It just can be very challenging. So this has been an extremely meaningful project for us to be able to work with people that are just ready and desperate to move forward and trying hard to get back on their feet instead of being a repeat offender, which statistically hangs over their head pretty hard to overcome. So this is a big passion for us here to try and really help curb that for them as well. We have our homegrown entrepreneurs. It's our stay-at-home mom and dads that sometimes get overlooked a little bit. It's very hard to get back into the market when you become a parent and then you get back into work at a later time in life. So we have a homegrown entrepreneur program, and we have our veterans program. So I'm a former vet. I served in the Coast Guard. My husband continues to serve. So we are very passionate about veterans that finish their time and then are trying to figure out how to acclimate to civilian life, which can also be very challenging. So we have all these programs and we highlight them here. And then you can become a client. This is kind of our landing page. And up here we do an English and a Spanish so that we can meet more people in specifics. But here's our donate now button. It goes to our actual donation page. We work with a company. It's just what was recommended by our website. You can use any web builder that you want. I built this through Squarespace, and it's worked out pretty well. I've enjoyed Squarespace. It's been good, but there's a lot of really good web builders out there. So I'm not endorsing one or the other. Through Squarespace, we use a program called Stripe. And so Stripe is kind of how the donations work. So we list down here, we're very open, and I encourage you to list like where you're registered. So we're registered North Carolina, and if you are or are not tax deductible. So that's important there. So if you hit donate, it should take you to investing in business ownership equality. And so making sure that they know what they're investing in. So this all goes immediately. It helps streamline because as you might know, for the end of the year, you have to make an accounting for all the donations that you took in. And the person that made the donation is going to want a receipt for tax purposes. So being able to send that immediately for their own record keeping is huge. It's very beneficial and keeps you much more organized. I did want to show you one other thing. This is my happy team. I'll just show you because I like them so much, but these are my team members. It is really good to go ahead and show your team as well. Because I think it adds some validity to your organization, makes you human, lets you know who's there, who you're talking to. These are our core. We do have volunteers that come in, like I mentioned, that might help with marketing, might help with even pro bono, like legal work. And those are very important people to us. We just don't have their picture up for every single person, but this is our main team. And then let's say somebody wants to schedule an appointment. So you can do scheduling through Calendly is one. There's so many to use. So again, do your research of what fits for what you need and what your budget is. We use, I think it's called Power Schedule, but again, it's through my website. My website builder, Squarespace, was pretty smart in trying to create a lot of things like actual add-ons to your business or to your nonprofit. And so it worked out for us. So anyway, you can come here and just very easily, we can do an initial consult if we've never worked with them before, or maybe after the initial consult, they say, oh, I know I need that marketing. So this helps us know also for our booking, who I need to get on the call. So if it's going to be like a business planning session, I have a great team member who's done business leadership for years. And so that's her specialty. And so helping our entrepreneurs know how to hire someone, how to conduct interviews. I mean, there's a lot of them that have never done it before. So she's great to coach through that and get that support. So when they choose these, it lets me not only streamline the process of, okay, you found the right time, the right date, we're available, but it also for me on the back end lets me know what team member do I need to assign to this event. And so that makes a big difference. So just wanted to share that operations with you. All right, so fundraising and resources. You can have your individual donors, your grants, sponsors, and partnerships. Those are the typical ones, but I encourage you to get creative. The world's changing all the time. We definitely try to do unique things. We have an upcoming lemon challenge that we're going to launch here pretty soon. We'll see if it's successful. But I think things like that can really help. And our lemon challenge is where you take a lemon and you take a bite into the lemon and you try and eat the lemon like as a whole. It's safe. I already Googled medical things. But it was inspired by the push-up challenge for suicide awareness. It was inspired by the ice bucket challenge and all of that. So it brings awareness, but also, we're going to say, I took the lemon challenge and I donated $50 to Ripe Lemon Investments to close the gap in entrepreneur goals or whatever, our statement might be. And now I challenge Jane Doe to the lemon challenge. And so we're going to try that out and see if that can generate some, not only funding, but some awareness that there's some free, really powerful resources for people out there trying to launch their business and get on their own feet. Then you have the natural thing of grants. This goes beyond individual donors. When you're doing grants, don't look just for governmental grants. Those are great, but they're very competitive. I mean, all the grants are competitive. Let me say that disclaimer. But governmental grants can be very strings attached. So if you can focus on private companies first, and my very limited experience with nonprofits and the people that I've talked to, I do think that can be very advantageous for your organization. Government grants are usually pretty hefty, like you can get a lot more money. But again, it's just a lot of check boxes. So if you're looking and you're brand new and you're just trying to get off the ground, those private company grants can be very meaningful. I mean, even $5,000 can get quite a bit of you off the ground of things that you might need to get started doing, and just covering some basic fees of like website and scheduling and all of those things. I know Chick-fil-A does one that we just applied for not too long ago. It was a pretty easy application. I mean, it was long. It wasn't, super fast, but the hardest part was we had to make a video to showcase what we did or who we are and what we do, which our clients, for like client privacy, we couldn't actually show what we do. So, we're going up against people that can show pictures of puppies that they're saving. So that's, which is awesome. But that made it a little bit harder for us, but it was really good to take time to just discuss what we do. Some of the clients, we can give them a little bit of qualitative and quantitative data, even though we can't video our actual clients. And that's really good. I will say people complain a lot about grants. And so I was really dreading it. But when I did this private company grant that we just applied for, it actually was almost therapeutic, where I looked back and thought, we really are doing stuff. We're pretty good. We're better than I thought we were. And it was really a team bonding experience for us. So it doesn't have to be grueling, doesn't have to be terrible, especially if you're doing it with awesome people and you're doing it for the right reasons. You'll look back and realize, wow, our company, I should say our nonprofit, is really growing, slow but steady, and that's important. So grants are great. That's where a lot of bulk money can come, but the power of individual donors is huge. Most people are actually funded pretty heavily by individual donors. You can do sponsorships. Businesses and corporations choose to pledge ongoing donations, or can even bring support to fundraising efforts. So maybe they'll let you use their main lobby for free. They host an event for you there. So they're not giving you money directly, but they're making it much easier for you to get money. And so that's huge. And then partnerships, anybody who's willing to support your mission, whether it's volunteering or sharing resources, anything that's going to build awareness for your organization, it's pivotal. I will share that do some Googling on what kind of resources out there, because there's so many. And I'll share that Google is one of them. They do like 10,000 in ad space for nonprofits if you are approved. We're just now starting an application for that. So I can't talk in great depth of that, but it's not overly complicated. And being able to run free ads like that every month just to build awareness of your organization, it's huge. That's huge. And there's quite a bit. Like Amazon, I think, has the Smile program where people can add your nonprofit, that like a portion of your purchase on Amazon can go to them. So get creative. There's so many companies that are excited to partner with you. You just need to kind of research and figure out who they are and how to do it. I know YouTube, if you're an organization that needs to make videos or things of that nature, they have studios all over the country that they will let you use for free. Again, if you qualify as a registered 501c3 nonprofit, to help you, spread your message. So maybe you're an educational, you're recording things for, youth that are trying to learn a trade or something, whatever it is that you're doing. There's a lot of resources out there, and so much so that it can get daunting. So definitely spread the challenge across the board of your team so that you can all pitch in. So additional considerations, our last slide. Operational, just remember that you have to remain nonpartisan, which means you cannot be political in the sense, obviously as a human being separate of your organization, you can participate. But when you're acting as the organization or within an organizational capacity that would make it appear that the organization is partisan to one side or another, you could lose your 501c3 for that. So make sure that you are nonpartisan. Also, document your monthly meetings. That is critical for you to maintain that you are upholding your bylaws, which is part of maintaining the requirements for your 501c3. Any type of data to determine salary range for staff members is important to use. There's a lot of comparability data out there for other nonprofits. And so when you're trying to be reviewed, and if you are actually doing what you need to be doing, basically you don't get your hand slapped for taking too big of a salary. You want to make sure that you're on par with what the rest of the nonprofits in your size range is taking. Because you should be paid a reasonable salary for the work that you're contributing to. Everybody understands that. But they just, if it's $600,000 or something egregious, then maybe rethink that. And then pay taxes on unrelated business income. This is like a whole big topic all in itself. So I will just say, go research the word unrelated business income. And in a nutshell, it's basically anything that goes beyond what your organization truly does. So if you are a health minute clinic that operates, but then you have some fundraiser that like sells textbooks to nursing school students, that's really unrelated to what your mission is. And so even though it's a fundraiser, even though it's meant to go right back to your mission, the IRS views that as unrelated business income, and it is taxed. So when you're choosing your fundraisers, you have to be very careful on what you're doing and that it truly is related to bringing specific awareness, specific support, all of that to your mission. And then you need to display, and I have it here, you can certainly use this one if you'd like, a disclosure statement that whenever you're doing a solicitation, people understand the license that you are soliciting with, that you have yours, and it's basically saying that they can request a copy of your solicitation license. And this is specifically for North Carolina. So if this goes beyond that, just know that it might be different per state. So that is that in the nutshell. I feel like it's such a big topic. I might have weaved and winded a little bit more, but just know that if you go back through at your own pace, you'll kind of see and follow the links of how to tangibly get up and running. But it is a big job to do it. You need to have a big passion for it. And choosing your name is really important. I wanted to share real quick. A lot of people ask me, where did you get Ripe Lemon Investments? Like, what does that even mean? And we say, oh, we help entrepreneurs launch their business. And specifically why we chose Ripe Lemon is because of that connotation, that lemons are kind of, they don't do what they're supposed to do. They're not really good. You kind of got a dud. And so we view that for some of our main target clientele, that there's some people in life that are kind of viewed as lemons, like that they're just not going to be capable of creating something. And we like to say, you know what, I contest that and say that if they're ripe, when they're ready, when they're invested in, when they have the right knowledge, when they have the right support, when they have the right tools, yeah, they're going to be terrific at what they do. And they absolutely can be a business owner. And ownership should not be for people of wealth only. It should not be people of connection only. It should be for anybody who has a great idea. And with the right support, they can bring that idea to life. And we have a lot of bleeding hearts on our team. And so we all really love to help where we can. And that was one thing when we first started, we thought, well, how can we do something and build something that solves a lot of problems all at once? And we thought, well, money it causes a lot of problems, but it solves a lot of problems too. And if we can help people build their own wealth, build their own thing, the number of problems that they struggle, housing insecurity, food insecurity, child care, all of that, we could help solve so many problems if we could help some of our lemons become ripe. And so that's where our mission came from. We are working every day to grow that mission. And I hope that this presentation has helped you and your organization and whatever mission you're serving. And just let me know if you have any questions, and I'm happy to answer. You can also email us and stay in touch. That's all for me.
Thanks so much, Tristan. What an awesome presentation. And thank you for the work that you do through your nonprofit. This is a population of citizens in North Carolina that really need the help and really make awesome things happen in their businesses when given this bit of assistance and leg up. We do have a question posted, and it is, what if we are wanting to start a religious nonprofit? Is there a difference in the processes?
No, there's not. There's a box when you go through, even for the IRS, for the 501c3, you'll check. It's just you're under a different class. They have different groupings for what you get registered under, but the process would be the same. So you just go through all the same website links that was displayed through the presentation, and just carefully read the documents that they're discussing with you, and you'll see it'll navigate you pretty naturally as you read through what would be appropriate for you.
Great. If anybody has other questions, please feel free to put them into the chat or the Q&A now. I've also noted in the chat the website where you will be able to find the recording of this webinar along with the slides that Tristan shared with us today. I anticipate that I'll be able to get that posted by early next week. On that site, you can also find a number of other really great webinars that are meant to support low wealth entrepreneurs in getting started, including a couple more offered by Tristan. Looks like we don't have any other questions coming in, and so I will end this recording.